Do you like to win?
Yes!
Okay. That yes was a bit quick. Someone isn't used to winning. No offense. It's just that I've seen someone who was. And let me tell you, he wouldn't have been able to answer so quickly. After a while, winning isn't even a reward anymore. It's an expectation. From you, and from everyone else competing. Winning your first tournament might be something that you're never going to forget. But your 4th tournament in a row though, that's just another Sunday afternoon.
At some point, everyone accepts it. Everyone begrudgingly accepts that the moment they see you come in, they're now fighting for 2nd place. Once you reach that point, just losing a set is enough for everyone to ask what's wrong with you that day. As if Pokemon wasn't a game with luck involved. Wait, why am I even getting mad here? This isn't even about me. This is about Sebastien Biaggi, the best player in my area at the time. This video is about my first encounter with him, and about discovering what it was going to take if I wanted to qualify for the World Championships. And let's make it clear, while this is my first encounter with him, it wasn't my first tournament. That happened the week before. My job messed up my schedule, which allowed me to go to Montreal for a local. I didn't notice that my Groudon had 0 attack IVs, and while you might call it shooting myself in the foot, others would have called it evening the playing field. The tournament went very smoothly for me. So smoothly in fact that before finals, my opponent ran to the bathroom, hoping to come up with a game plan against me. Not only did it not work, that match might have been the fastest I had all day. The organizer was very surprised when it was already over. One of the fastest finals that I've ever seen at a local. That brings us to the next day, where I was going to meet the next potential hurdle on my Pokemon Worlds journey. Ready for Sebi! That brings me to work because, yeah, winning a local tournament didn't mean that I could quit my day job. Who knew? I had to figure out if I did have that Saturday off from work. I did ask for it, but the only reason why I was able to enter my first tournament was because they gave me the wrong one off. So I expected them to keep it up with their mistakes. Luckily for me, they did get it right, so I was able to go. I was barely paying attention during my shift, still daydreaming about the previous day for most of it. I don't think that I've got anything left interesting to say about work here, so let's just move on to how I prepared for the next tournament. Because even though I won the last Premier Challenge, it wasn't an excuse to start taking things easy. I knew I could have done better in some rounds, and I was going to keep facing stronger players. So I might as well talk a bit more in depth about something I briefly mentioned in the previous video. The Pokemon VGC group on Facebook. They were hosting a team league. A pool of 50 players were going to be put into 5 teams where they would work together to beat the other teams, with each player facing someone from another team for that week. 60 players signed up, meaning that 10 weren't going to make the cut. Some players in the pool had qualified for Worlds or had top cut regionals before, so I wasn't going to be picked early, if at all. The team members were picked by Snake Draft in a Discord call. The first round came, then the second, 5th, 8th. The options were starting to run out, and I was still waiting for my turn. Then finally, in the 9th round, I heard the words I was hoping to hear. Oh yeah, that guy's Canadian. Jean-Marc? Thank you. But it's Jean-Marc. Okay. Everyone, say hi to John Madden! I made it. I was drafted on the Marvel Marabs. This experience was one of the defining points of my VGC career because a lot of my closest friends in the game have been because of this team. I knew that picking me in the first place was a gamble, so I was grateful, even if the reason was silly. I was ready. It was time for me to prove myself and not let the team down by having a strong performance week 1. I let the team down. Well, not really. I was the second to last person drafted. They had no expectations from me, but this match was a lesson. Even if things had gone well in the past, it doesn't mean that it will keep on going well. I used a team that I had brought to the Premier Challenge, but with a proper Groudon, since that was after Logan's note-taking lesson, and decided that from this point on, I would mainly focus on the other team. Since I've just talked about the note-taking lesson, I might as well talk about how I take notes, going in reverse chronological order, since the amount of notes I need to take nowadays is much lower than back in the day for a multitude of reasons. First thing I write down is which 6 my opponents are using on the left side of the page. On the right, I usually separate each game with 2 columns. What I brought on the left and what my opponent brought on the right. I write down which Pokemon use the generational gimmick next to their name for both sides. I also write down things like unusual EV spreads, especially speed tiers. One of the most important things to figure out speed tiers before the battle even starts is ability activation order. Other less obvious ways to figure them out include weather or status chip damage, and grassy terrain recovery. With close team sheets tournaments, I would write down the moves and items used on Pokemon when they weren't necessarily obvious. Some teams can have up to 3 Pokemon that could hold an item like Citrus Berry or Assault Vest. So knowing which Pokemon has an item also means knowing which ones don't. Similarly, a Pokemon that reveals a move that it doesn't normally run indirectly reveals that it dropped one of its standard moves for it. So writing down its moves makes it easier to go through the process of elimination. And the last one was pretty specific to my time in VGC 2016, since it is shown in game after that, but stat changes and Tailwind or Trick Room turns were the other things that I'd write down. The random stat changes from Smeargle's Moody made writing them down very important. I guess that it does count as a stat boost, but I do still write down the Pro Synthesis and Quark Drive boosts. I don't think that practicing taking notes is necessary nowadays. Some top players don't even take them in the first place, since they'd rather be fully focused on the game in front of them. The main reasons why I take notes nowadays is to analyze my run after the tournament, like how much I brought each Pokemon and how I use my Terras, and to make it easier for me to talk about those tournaments when I get to those videos in like 4 years from now. I don't have anything left to talk about my prep, so let's just skip to the tournament. Alright, let's go grab a team sheet. I wonder how the competition is going to look this week, since I don't think most of them were in Montreal. The only one that I know should be here from last week should be the guy from... Wait, aren't you the subscribe guy? The what? Didn't you go, I wonder if I still have it, as we walked past the subway? That didn't happen? Don't even try, I know you said it. Open Google Maps, man. There's no subway between the venue and where we went. I don't even know when I could have said that, but you definitely... Great, I found a weirdo. Obviously, this didn't happen, but I think that the message was clear. The atmosphere felt different compared to last week. While in Montreal, everyone was just chatting before the start, it was much more quiet this time, either focusing on filling their sheets or just preparing mentally. We were told that because there were 9 players and 4 rounds of Swiss, we would be playing best of 1 Swiss to make sure that the tournament would be done in time. I heard that before I turned my team sheet in, and despite thinking about changing teams to survive best of 1 better, I felt more confident on this version of the team, so I figured that I would stick with it. So, what team was I going with? If you've watched my previous video, it's the team with the special Groudon. I won't go in depth about it, but I'll go through the important parts, including the one minor change I made between the 2 tournaments. Kangaskhan is the Mega I went with. I always lead with it because Fake Out helps a lot, and it's so oppressive that it feels like playing with 2.5 restricted Pokemon. Talonflame is the main source of speed control, and is mainly there to support. Priority Brave Bird is nice too. I went with Special Groudon because it can't miss its moves. Thanks to Primal Groudon's surprisingly good special attack stat, it hits harder than you'd expect. Xerneas. I went for 4 speed EVs last week to enough speed EVs to outspeed my Groudon by 1 point. The reason for that being... I don't remember? It was 8 years ago. Give me a break. Whimsicott was an alternative form of speed control. It was mainly there to make the Smeargle matchup safer, since Prankster's Safeguard reduces variance by a lot. I could go in detail about why I decided to run Cresselia, but I'll be honest, it was a freeloader that day. It did not leave team preview, so I won't. Well, that takes care of the team sheet. Let's go submit it. Video game players, your round 1 pairings are up! I could tell you who my round 1 opponent was by looking at the final standings, because this is the only person that I didn't see at any other tournament. Because of that though, I won't really bother with calling him anything other than his in-game name of Math. He's also the only one that I don't have the full 6-4 in this video. I saw Smeargle, which basically confirmed to me that I wanted to use Whimsicott. As much as I would like to pretend that there was anything worth noting in my thought process in Team Preview, there was nothing that convinced me that I wanted to lead anything other than Kangaskhan and bring both Restricteds in the back. He leads Smeargle and Giratina. Looking at his lead, I have no reason to be so afraid of Smeargle that I need to fake it out. Because of that, I choose to not Mega Evolve and go for the Fake Out into the Giratina, which will work thanks to Scrappy. And I choose to click Safeguard with Whimsicott to play it safe. He goes for the Spiky Shield with Smeargle. I don't mind it at all here. The turn goes just as I was expecting. Defense boost means that I can't KO Smeargle, but I don't mind it since it can't click Dark Void anymore. And no evasion boost means that I don't have to be too afraid. I go for the Mega Evolution and Power Up Punch into the Smeargle, along with a Tailwind since I expect Smeargle to switch out or click Follow Me, so I can't go for Encore. Smeargle goes for Transform before Kangaskhan attacks. Pause. If anyone remembers how I said last time that I EV trained my Kangaskhan specifically to outspeed Smeargle, I lied. I changed it after this because I only realized at that point that my EV spread was actually a speed tie. Ironically enough though, it was to my advantage in this specific scenario since he no longer had the defense boost and he transformed before I could get my attack boosts. Unpause. Power Up Punch happens. Smeargle lives but not comfortably at all. Giratina goes for Tailwind? That's cool with me. That's a free Encore. I go for the Encore into the Giratina and a Power Up Punch into the Smeargle. The Sucker Punch into Kangaskhan is way too obvious. I'm not going to risk a speed tie when I know I can punish him harder. Smeargle does go for the Sucker Punch before going down, and Giratina falls for the Encore. He probably let the Encore happen since he expected me to go for it on Smeargle last turn if I had it. I don't know what I went with on Kangaskhan since it got faked out. Whimsicott went for Endeavor into the Raichu to break the Focus Sash. Giratina switches out for Kyogre. Since Raichu just used Fake Out, he's probably going to switch it out. I don't care though and click Encore into it, since Kangaskhan picks up Kyogre with Return, and I have nothing better to do with Whimsicott. The turn goes as planned and Raichu switches back in. When I first rewatched this replay and saw this exact situation, I had one thought. I hope that I click Encore into the Raichu. I did. It looks flashy, and on the surface level, it looks like a read, but it's not. Tailwind doesn't help. Safeguard only helps against Nuzzle, which means that Raichu would go down to Sucker Punch, and Endeavor is useless. Encore into the Raichu would be optimal to catch a potential Fake Out, and Kangaskhan or Return into the Raichu covers for a potential double into the Whimsicott. He didn't go for Fake Out. I don't care about the Thunderbolt. Raichu goes down. Giratina goes for the Dragon Claw, and picks up Kangaskhan with a critical hit. I have no idea if the crit matters, and frankly, I don't care. I won. I can switch in Xerneas and click Encore to lock Giratina into Dragon Claw in front of two fairy types. That's checkmate, and he realizes that too since he forfeits immediately after. That was about as clean as it gets. I don't remember much happening between rounds 1 and 2. Pairings eventually were announced, and I was paired against Kevin Paggi for round 2. While he wasn't wearing the DDD cosplay at the tournament, he has actually worn it at Smash tournaments, and I thought it looked too cool to not use it for a sprite. He wasn't going to be an easy match. He had been playing in tournaments since the province started having premier challenges, so for over a year, he was running this. Triple Intimidate looks excessive. I was glad that both of my restricted Pokemon were special attackers, but it was going to make it hard to figure out what I wanted to bring. I could see him go either for the Trick Room mode or the Tailwind mode with Salamis. Trick Room seemed more likely to deal with Xerneas better. I had no idea if I preferred Talonflame, who would be more useful against Trick Room, but would be vulnerable to Intimidate, or Whimsicott, which would be immune to Intimidate, but would also help against Hypnosis if Bronzong was Mental Herb. In the end, I chose to go with Whimsicott. Encore would force Bronzong to switch out after setting Trick Room up. One of the fun things about Kangaskhan is the fact that while it is also not a fan of Intimidate, I can use Power Up Punch to offset Intimidate drops, and stacking up Intimidates means that Kudam would be forced to play passively, making my Power Up Punches much safer. He led Kyogre and Manectric. This is not the lead I was expecting. You typically want to save your Primal Reversion if you can, since it happens after abilities. So if I happen to bring in Groudon at the same time that Kyogre switches in on a future turn, I don't have to worry about speed tiers. The sun is guaranteed to go up. I go for the Fake Out into Kyogre since I don't need to take any unnecessary risks, and go for the Tailwind. I assume that I'm just very afraid of the Manectric, but in hindsight, I do think that it's a bit of an overreaction. An Endeavor into whatever would probably be better. He switches Kyogre out for Bronzong. It's slightly annoying, but not a big deal. We both Mega Evolve. He goes for the Volt Switch into the Whimsicott. Groudon switches in. I don't really get the logic there, but I decided to double the Bronzong. Did I just not care about the Groudon picking up Whimsicott? Or did I think it was going to protect when he probably knows that I'm running Encore? No clue, but I go for the Power Up Punch because I can't KO anything, but I can at least offset the Intimidate with that. Bronzong switches back out for the Manectric, probably afraid of a taunt from Whimsicott. Another Intimidate is fine. I don't really care here. I get the damage off into the Manectric and get my boost, while he picks up one Whimsicott. If he would have kept Bronzong in and set Trick Room, it probably would have been awkward, but this scenario actually looks pretty good for me. Groudon looks like a safe switch in, since I'm faster thanks to Tailwind in front of two Pokemon weak to ground. On dual primals, Groudon is typically faster than Kyogre to make sure that the rain is up when both switch in at the same time, so Earth Power should pick up the Groudon. That means that I can click Power Up Punch into the Manectric again, and Earth Power is Groudon. Manectric switching out for Bronzong is fine, since it's still a free boost and chip. Earth Power somehow doesn't pick up, and he gets to click Precipice Blades, which hurts a lot. I decide to be a bit greedy and click Power Up Punch into the Bronzong again, and Eruption. I say it's a bit greedy because if he calls it, he can switch a Bronzong out for Kyogre and get a double KO of Precipice Blades. But that would require going for a very risky read, which would seem very out of character for him based on how cautious he's been playing so far. If there are no switches, this should pick up both Pokemon and give another boost to Kangaskhan. He switched Groudon out for Kyogre, which is fine here. Eruption won't do anything, but Kangaskhan is getting another +2 in attack. He sets Trick Room with Bronzong. Tailwind expires on my end, which couldn't come at a better time. The Kyogre is in Sucker Punch range even if I get intimidated. I don't see any reason to not go for it. I go for a Nerf Power into the Bronzong to cover for a skill swap into Kangaskhan. At worst, I get to confirm whether the Bronzong is Levitate or Heat Proof. He switched the Kyogre out for the Manectric. Another attack drop. Sucker Punch fails. Bronzong goes for a Gyro Ball into the Groudon. I find out that the Bronzong is in fact Levitate. I go for the Sucker Punch into the Manectric in case Gyro Ball goes into the Kangaskhan and gets a critical hit. Because a Kyogre switch-in looks unlikely, or more importantly, because I don't care, I go for an Eruption. Bronzong switches out for Groudon. I get my perfect scenario with a double knockout, which forces Kyogre and Bronzong to switch back in. 2 Trick Room turns are left, and I'm basically in my dream scenario. Kyogre is in range of a Sucker Punch this turn, which forces it to protect, and for Bronzong to either try to pick up Kangaskhan or try something like Skill Swap. I doubt I'm in danger though. I think that I normally should switch Groudon out for Xerneas since it can safely take a Gyro Ball, and Kyogre can't put out any pressure, so so I can stall out Trick Room with a double protect the following turn. Instead, I click protect with Groudon. Sucker Punch does go off into the Kyogre. I get a critical hit to get it in one hit, but a critical hit being 1.5 times the damage, it means that I would have picked it up with the second hit of Parental Bond anyway. He goes for the skill swap into Kangaskhan. At this point, I have no reason to not click Sucker Punch and Earth Power for the last turn of Trick Room. He no longer has Levitate since he gave it to Kangaskhan, so it would go down to Earth Power. If he tries to attack, Sucker Punch picks up. The only way he can survive that turn is by going for skill swap into Kangaskhan again, which would still be checkmate since Eruption and Return would pick up the following turn. Anyway, he forfeits. I was now 2-0. Top Cut was starting to look good. I only had to win one of the 2 remaining rounds to be guaranteed to make it. I didn't have to wait for too long for pairings to go up because our match took quite a while. In fact, they're going up now. Wait. Why did the music change just now? Oh, that's why. I'm paired against Sebi. Finally, I was going to face him. Was he actually going to live up to the expectations? Or was I about to be disappointed yet again? This looks like a very tricky team. I need Talonflame here, if only to deal with Jumpluff. Outside of that, the default 3 picks look good. We both led with similar plans, even if we have no Pokemon in common. A Pokemon with Fake Out, and a Pokemon with Tailwind. I figured that I don't need to trade Fake Outs if he chooses to not target my Kangaskhan. I can delay my Tailwind by a turn thanks to Galewings giving it priority, and instead, I can choose to give myself some momentum by going for a Power-Up Punch with Kangaskhan into the Weavile, offsetting the Intimidate and even giving myself a boost. Due to the quadruple weakness against fighting and the fact that Weavile is a frail Pokemon, I should pick it up. I go for the Tailwind with Talonflame, which doesn't matter because Weavile goes for the Fake Out into it, revealing its Life Orb in the process. Salamence goes for the Tailwind. I do pick up the Weavile with Power Up Punch and now have a +1 boost in attack. He switches Groudon in. I expect Kangaskhan to go down, so I go for the Sucker Punch into the Groudon, and I go for the Tailwind. I think that it's a good call, since I think that Groudon is the bigger threat, and keeping Salamence in is better for me compared to letting Xerneas switch in for free. Groudon might be a bulky variant too, and might live on Earth Power, so the chip damage will remove any doubts about that. Sucker Punch goes off and does about 35% to Groudon. Salamence goes for the Hyper Voice, doing respectable damage to both. Groudon goes for the Fire Punch into Kangaskhan, finishing it off. I switch Groudon in, since it should be able to threaten this Groudon and my Xerneas doesn't want to take more damage than it should right now. I decide to go for the Earth Power into the Groudon and Brave Bird into the Salamence. I don't think that those are horrible choices, but they aren't what I'd go for nowadays. I get the logic behind the Brave Bird. I'm under the assumption that I'm getting KO'd before I get the chance to click Taunt into the Salamence. I'm not wrong, but I get no value from Brave Bird chip damage since I'm probably not hitting Salamence with Eruption in any circumstance, and I'm getting a KO with any other attack that can hit Salamence. Earth Power isn't great. I don't want Xerneas to switch in right now. An opposing Geomancy would hurt too much, especially since I'm confident that I'm about to lose my Talonflame, which would mean that I wouldn't be able to taunt Xerneas. This is a turn where I'd want to click Protect. This puts me in a position where I'd be able to outspeed his Groudon, pick it up with Earth Power, and set up a Geomancy with little to no cost. I have to admit that part of why I would make this decision is because I know how Sebi plays much better now after years of playing against him, and know that he's almost certainly running a bulky Groudon. But the fact that I went for the Earth Power implies that I thought that even back then. It makes sense when I made that assumption. He was running something heavily reliant on positioning like Mega Gengar and Jumpluff, and he was the best player here. Both of those heavily implied that he'd prefer a bulky Groudon, which would give him better room to position than a faster Groudon. He goes for Protect on Groudon. I get some chip on Salamence with Brave Bird. Salamence goes for Hyper Voice, picking up Talonflame in the process. I decide to go for a double protect since it's the last turn of Tailwind for him. I get it, but I don't think it's an amazing choice. My reasoning for why it's bad is the same as last turn, but in this case, it's a bit more understandable since I assume that my lack of familiarity with damage calcs back then meant that I thought that Double Edge might pick up my Groudon. It wouldn't. I don't blame myself for choosing to play it safe here, since I was too new to be that comfortable with estimating damage calcs on the fly. But the fact that I chose to play it a bit too safe meant that I was likely to let him get a free Xerneas switch or a free Tailwind. This turn has nothing interesting happening outside of his Tailwind expiring. I realized at that point that I needed to take a risk. Either try to call this Groudon protecting, or play very aggressively by double attacking here. I decided to call that his Groudon was going to protect and went for Geomancy and Hidden Power Ice into the Salamence. This also makes sense because even if he doesn't go for protect with Groudon, I can hope for a Precipice Blades miss. He didn't protect. This probably isn't good. I get the Geomancy and pick up the Salamence. He goes for the Precipice Blades and hits both. Groudon goes down, Xerneas is down to less than half. My only chance at this point is hoping for a choke. I hope that he tries to attack or protect with Xerneas instead of Geomancy, and that he doesn't protect Groudon, so I target it. At worst, I might have a shot if I'm faster than his Xerneas and get a critical hit. He doesn't protect either. Groudon goes down, and he goes for Geomancy. His Xerneas is faster on the following turn, and I lose. So he didn't live up to his reputation after all. Out of the 2 tournaments I've played in so far, it was the first time where I had no choice but to admit that I lost to getting outplayed. He was good, but he didn't seem unbeatable. I can't confidently say that I noticed every single mistake I did back then, but I definitely noticed enough to make me think that I had a chance if I was going to face him again in Top Cut, which was still possible since I only needed to win the next round. What were his thoughts about me though? What's wrong with him? He picks his moves so quickly, he looks like he doesn't even think before locking his moves. If that wasn't bad enough on its own, the moment he's done, he just stares at you. What do you want, man? Try thinking instead of looking at me as if I was supposed to tell you what to do. Oh, yeah, I guess I might as well explain what's the deal behind that. There are a few reasons why I do this. Back then, I wouldn't leave Team Preview until I at least figured out what I wanted to do turn 1. Nowadays, it's until I figured out my first few turns. I've always been a read heavy player, and observing my opponent's body language helps me with making reads. Do I pick things up by observing? Not consciously, but the fact that I'm more consistent with reads in person compared to online isn't something that I chalk up to coincidence. I usually ran teams that had simple game plans, which meant that the decision-making process was quick. Nowadays, I try to think a turn further than where I was at, while my opponent is still thinking about the current turn, and while animations are playing out. On top of all of that, staring at opponents gives the impression that I'm playing confidently, and that I'm in their heads, which increases the chance for them to make a mistake. One thing that I've noticed over the years is that I've been constantly making people play worse. And while there are a lot of reasons that explains why, this is one of the big ones. Back to the tournament, if I wanted to get my rematch against Sebi, I needed to secure a spot in Top Cut. It was already guaranteed to make it, but I wasn't. Who was I going to face for my win-in if I wanted to do that? In a funny twist of fate, I was going to face the subscribe guy. Can you stop calling me the subscribe guy? Yeah, you'd like that, wouldn't you? I really walked into that one, didn't I? Yes. Yes, you did. I can't believe you didn't see that coming. So, will you actually stop? Will you? No. You better not comment. God! You guys know you can start, right? Oh, good luck. And that's what you get for pretending to not be able to hear the narrator until now. I never even called you the subscribe guy. And I never will again, since that was the last time that I have interacted with him. I was now 3-1 at the end of the Swiss rounds, confirming my second top cut in a row. Standings were announced for top cut. Unsurprisingly, Sebi went 4-0 in Swiss and was going to face Groudon in top 4. I was going to face someone named Alex Labelle or Warchomp. Alex drove to the tournament with Groudon and had been attending tournaments for as long as him. It wasn't going to be an easy match, but I knew I was going to be able to hold my own. We got to team preview, and this is what I saw. My restricted Pokemon matched up well into his. I had no reason to go for the Trick Room mode, so it was a choice between Talonflame or Whimsicott. Whimsicott didn't seem too useful since there was no sleep, and it was weak to 4 out of the 6 Pokemon on his team. While Talonflame seemed good, especially considering how both Talonflame and Hitmontop had priority moves, making Quick Guard a nice option to have. Lead it with Kangaskhan, the 2 restricted Pokemon in the back, and I was ready to go. He led Talonflame and Gengar. I think that he won't expect Scrappy, so Fake Out without Mega Evolving into the Gengar should be good. I have no idea what he's going to do with Talonflame, so going for Talon on my end will cover most options for the following turn. I did get the fact that he didn't expect it correctly, and we both said Tailwind. I expect a Will-O-Wisp from Gengar, so a Sucker Punch from Kangaskhan isn't a good idea. I Mega Evolve and go for Return into the Talonflame instead. I go for a Brave Bird into the Gengar, since it should be close to a KO based on how much Fake Out did. He goes for the Quick Guard, which isn't good for me, and he does go for the Will-O-Wisp into Kangaskhan. Return does about 60% after the burn. I go for the Power Up Punch into the Talonflame since I think it would KO and give me a boost. And I went for a taunt with my Talonflame. Not sure into who, because it gets KO'd before it can unleash it by a double into it. His Talonflame lives. This isn't the end of the world though. Xerneas doesn't want to come in front of Gengar, so Groudon it is. I go for the Sucker Punch into the Gengar to try to pick it up, and Eruption to pick up the Talonflame. He goes for the Quick Guard, which stops my Sucker Punch. He goes for an Icy Wind, dropping the speed of both. Groudon picks up a double KO, and Talon expires on both sides. Hitmontop and Groudon switch in. This turn normally should be simple. Switch the Groudon into Xerneas to reset the speed, and go for the Sucker Punch into the Groudon. For some reason, I decide to protect with Groudon. It's probably because I was overvaluing the Xerneas when its only real use was picking up the Hitmontop, a Pokemon that I'm not very scared of here. He fakes out my Kangaskhan and goes for the Precipice Blades, picking up my Kangaskhan. I am down to Groudon and Xerneas. At this point, I can only hope that Groudon dodges a Precipice Blades or lives thanks to the spread reduction. I go for a Moonblast to the Hitmontop since I'm afraid of a Wide Guard. Helping Hand isn't something I was expecting, but it's good to know heading into games 2 and 3. Xerneas goes first, which heavily implies that his Groudon is slower than both of my restricted Pokemon. Hitmontop goes down, and Precipice Blade picks up Groudon, while leaving my Xerneas at just above 25%. I have no choice here. The only thing I can do is go for the Moonblast to get an idea on his bulk. It does very little, heavily implying that it's a specially defensive Groudon. I lost this game. One more loss and I'm out. No reason to panic though. I did get a lot of info from this match. Let's remember what I learned. I have the Gengar's full set. I know that the Hitmontop has Helping Hand. I know 3 out of 4 of Talonflame's moves. And I know that the Groudon is slow and bulky, and is either mixed or physical. I didn't see anything from that match that led me to believe I should change any of the Pokemon I brought, just that I should be playing better. I need to be especially careful of Talonflame's Quick Guard going forward. He switched up his lead this time. He went with Hitmontop and Gengar. I decided that I wouldn't go for the Fake Out this time and Mega Evolve directly. Since I knew that the damage I would be doing wouldn't be enough to let me do anything, I decided to go for the power-up punch with Kangaskhan to punish a potential fake out and still let me click Sucker Punch the following turn if I wanted to. I decided to go for the taunt into the Gengar to both stop a Will-O-Wisp and to force him to get Sucker Punch or switch out the next turn. He goes for the Protect with Gengar and also doesn't fake out with Hitmontop since taunt goes first. I get the power-up punch and he goes for close combat into the Kangaskhan, getting the KO. I switch Groudon in. Like last game, Xerneas doesn't want to switch in front of Gengar. This looks good for me, funnily enough. The drops on Hitmontop help me, and I can go for a safe Protect and Tailwind, since nothing on his end stops it. He goes for the Wide Guard, expecting me to go for Eruption and an Icy Wind, dropping my Talonflame speed by a stage. I have no reason to not go for Earth Power into Gengar and Brave Bird into Hitmontop. He goes for a Helping Hand. Brave Bird picks up the Hitmontop thanks to the defense drop from close combat, and Nerf Power picks up the Gengar. Talonflame and Groudon are in the back. I try to go for a taunt since as Brave Bird picks up Talonflame before it gets to do anything. I go for the Earth Power to pick up his Groudon. He forfeits immediately after and tells me that the Earth Power is a roll into his Groudon. This was more like it. I cleaned up my play and it now looked much better for me. He even gave me some info for free, which I can take advantage of for Game 3. After seeing how this game went, he's probably going back to his Game 1 lead. Do I care? Pfft, no. I run the same 4-back. He went back to his Game 1 lead of Talonflame and Gengar. He's going for Will-O-Wisp and Quick Guard. Wait, what are you doing? I don't need your fancy explanations. I just need to return the Talonflame and taunt the Gengar. Why would I cover any other move when it's obviously what he's going for? Alright then. Let's just see how it goes. You both Mega Evolve. He goes for the Quick Guard. You get the taunt. He does go for the Will-O-Wisp. You return the Talonflame and get the KO. It's just that easy. He switches Hitmontop in. Gengar is probably not staying in. If I'm feeling greedy, I could go for the return into Gengar and taunt it to Hitmontop to prevent him from going for Wide Guard in the future. Instead, I choose to play it safe and go for the Sucker Punch into Gengar and Tailwind. Gengar switches out for Groudon and he goes for Fake Out into Talonflame. Overall, a pretty quiet turn. In this scenario, I don't see a reason why I wouldn't go for Power Up Punch into the Groudon and Tailwind. I just want enough chip to KO his Groudon with mine when I decide to switch it in, which any amount of damage would accomplish. I'm not going to pick up any KO this turn. The only way that he'd be able to pick up my Kang would be with a close combat anyway, so the defense drop would most likely put it in Brave Bird range. Instead, I choose to go for Return into Hitmontop to put it in Brave Bird range. I still go for the Tailwind though. Tailwind goes up and returns us just over half, activating Hitmontop's Citrus Berry. Fire Punch goes into Talonflame and Close Combat goes into Kang. This is still a good position and an easy switch to Groudon. I decide to go for Earth Power into Groudon and Brave Bird into Hitmontop. It covers for a Protect, and I figured that I would live anyway, unless he went for a Helping Hand and Precipice Blades, which I felt he wasn't going to go for since I was calling out his aggressive moves well. He did go for Protect, and I picked up his Hitmontop for free, leaving my Talonflame with 7 HP. Gengar comes back in. I Earth Power the Groudon and tells me that the Earth Power is a roll into his Groudon. Since he did tell me, I might as well Brave Bird his Groudon to be safe. My Groudon should then win the 1v1 against Gengar, but I even have a Xerneas in the back to buy me a turn. I do pick up his Groudon with both, sacrificing my Talonflame in the process with the recoil, and he gets a nice wind off. Xerneas switches in. I go for the Earth Power and Geomancy. The Geomancy is to cover for a Protect, since he might want to stall out the last turn of Tailwind. He doesn't though. I get the Geomancy off. His Gengar goes before my Groudon and gets the Sludge Bomb into Xerneas.
getting a poison, and Groudon picks up the Gengar. That was a tough one. I could have played better at times, but I adjusted well to make my second finals in 2 weeks. I'd like to act as if there was going to be any form of suspense about who was waiting for me in the finals, but you've all probably guessed at this point. Yes, I was up against Sebi. Before the start of the set, he decided to go to the bathroom. He didn't go in there because he was worried about thinking of a game plan or anything like that, but since I had some time for myself, I wasn't going to say no. You know how it goes. Stop. No. We're not doing this again. This is a second video. Are you already running out of material? Were you going to copy the speech too? You know he did go undefeated, right? That wasn't going to work. Come on. We both know you can do better than that. I'll give you another chance. Since you're supposed to be so much better than me, give me some of your wisdom for this set. Just don't lose? Just don't lose. Really? That's all you've got? At that point you could have just said, just click buttons, and it would have been just as helpful. Can't believe that this is what 8 years of playing amounts to. Oh great, here he comes. This team preview is a formality more than anything. These are the 6 in case you forgot. I'm going with the same 4 as usual. I didn't lose last time because I brought the wrong Pokemon. I lost because I didn't play well enough, so I just had to fix that. We both kept our Swiss leads. I decided to go for the power-up punch into the Weavile and Tailwind again. This turn 1 was pretty much a repeat of the last one. He went for the fake out into the Talonflame and set up the Tailwind. I pick up his Weavile. This time, he switched Xerneas in. I have to respect the Xerneas, so I went for the return into it and set my own Tailwind. Tailwind goes up. He goes for the double edge into my Kangaskhan, which does about 70%. Xerneas goes for the Geomancy, and Kangaskhan picks it up. He decided to be a bit greedy, but it makes sense since I played the Swiss match in a very reckless way, so expecting me to let him set up the Geomancy for free makes sense. My position here is really good. I double the Salmon since my Groudon wins against his. I pick up the Salamence, and Groudon goes for the Fire Punch into Talonflame, probably hoping that he could have picked both up with Hyper Voice. He was playing from behind at this point, so he had to hope that I was going to choke here. I didn't give him the opportunity. I go for Brave Bird and return into his Groudon. I have no reason not to. His Groudon barely lives and picks up my Kangaskhan. His Tailwind expires. It really doesn't matter which one I switch in. It's a formality at this point. I go for the Brave Bird to pick up his Groudon. I don't have Game 2's replay, but I know that I lost. I remember that he went for the fake out into the Kangaskhan this time, which meant that we both went for the Tailwind turn 1. I realized by the end of the match that I lost because my Tailwind expired at the same time as his, and would have been in a much better position if it wasn't for that. That's a concept that people call staggering Tailwind. Since usually the more threatening Pokemon are in the back, Tailwind turns later in the game are more valuable. That was something I was going to keep in mind heading into Game 3 and use as an adjustment. Fourth game playing the matchup, fourth time we're going for the same lead. This time, I will go for the power-up punch into the Weavile again, but I will now go for the taunt into the Salamence instead. This will give me the speed advantage after turn 2, since he won't be able to set Tailwind anymore. We both Mega Evolve turn 1. He goes for the fake out into Kangaskhan again. I taunt the Salamence as he does try to go for the Tailwind. I have no reason to not go for Tailwind and power up Punchy to Weavile, since I want the speed control, and getting the KO on Weavile while also getting the boost is the most I can do right now. Tailwind goes up, Weavile goes for the Icicle Crash into Kangaskhan. Salamence goes for the Hyper Voice, finishing off my Kangaskhan. Groudon isn't in a horrible position here, but I choose to switch in Xerneas to get a double KO with Dazzling Gleam. I wasn't sure if I was going to KO the Salamence at the time with a Dazzling Gleam, so I decided to go for a Brave Bird into it to get the chip damage to guarantee it. I knew that was likely going to be a naive nature because that was the standard nature for a mixed attacking set, but I didn't know my calcs well enough at the time. I don't think I was wrong to go with that with my limited experience, but if I had known at the time, I would have gone for a switch into Groudon and Dazzling Gleam to put myself in a much more imposing position for the following turn and to reset the Intimidate drop on Talonflame for the late game. I get the double KO. He switches Xerneas and Groudon in. This is trickier. I'm not too scared of Groudon because mine is faster and KOs. I'm scared of Xerneas, so I go for the taunt. I also go for the Moonblast into it. He protects, so I wasted my turn. Hopefully I'm not in a horrible... Wait, that's Roar. Yep, you saw that right. That was very well played by him. The Geomancy here from my end made a lot of sense. I instead went a bit too aggressive and was actually rewarded for it. He spent 3 whole games hiding the Roar for this moment, and it was wasted because he was facing a moron who is allergic to winning. I'll take the Groudon switcher. Earth Power Groudon, taunt Xerneas. I've got nothing better to do. He unsurprisingly protects Groudon. I get the taunt, and he goes for Moonblast into Groudon. Luckily for me, there is no special attack drop. Tailwind expires. I know that this Xerneas is faster than my Groudon, so I'm afraid of the special attack drop. Unfortunately for me, I have to risk it since I don't want to let him stall the taunt. I go for the Brave Bird to help cover for a special attack drop, and a Nerf Power into the Groudon. Brave Bird goes off. Moonblast goes off, which luckily for me doesn't drop my Groudon special attack, which allows me to pick up his Groudon. I'm now in a 3 versus 1. I go for the Tailwind and Nerf Power. I think that Protect on this turn and an Eruption on the following turn would have been better, but I get wanting to maximize the turns I've got while he's still taunted. Tailwind goes up. He goes for Dazzling Gleam, picking up the Talonflame. To add insult to injury, I get a crit with Earth Power, putting his Xerneas in range of another one. I go for the Earth Power and Moonblast. I don't care. The game is decided at this point. Congratulations to the winner of the Premier Challenge, Jama! This felt like a huge contrast to the previous week. Everyone stuck around and watched attentively. They were all applauding me. I did it. I beat the best player in the province to make it 2-2 in tournament wins. I had reached the maximum amount of points that I could get until December. Sebi left immediately and thanked Hideki on his way out for organizing, followed by everyone else thanking him too. I didn't even realize that no one really did it in Montreal, but since then, I've made sure to thank the organizer every time I go to a local. Some people stuck around, namely Kulam and Warchomp. We talked for a while about various things about the game, how we started, how their experiences in past tournaments were like, how they started driving to events together. We even talked about how we each could have approached our matches against one another differently if we were to play again. I think that we stayed for an extra 2 hours before we decided to head out. And this is why when people ask how good you have to be before starting to attend locals, I'll tell them to just start as soon as they can. People are usually this welcoming, and you're going to learn a lot from them. You don't go to locals because you're good enough. You go to locals in order to become good enough. I know that it sounds very hypocritical coming from someone who won the first 2 locals he attended, but I only waited that long before going because I couldn't before that. Besides, it's not like I was the best player there to begin with. I just happened to have played slightly better than Sebi during the finals. I still had plenty to learn. You might be thinking, this is a perfect spot to end this! The tournament just ended, you beat the best player, what else could there be to this? And I'll tell you that it's not. You've seen the title in the intro, and while I've shown that Sebi was in fact good, so far, it wasn't anything that seemed that incredible. There was no moment in this tournament where I thought, there's no way I can beat him. My next tournament, the last I played in the 2016 format, did show me though. I didn't take it as seriously, so I don't think it's worth making a standalone video about it, but what I saw that day was so impressive that I just can't skip it entirely. Before we get to that though, I'll tie the other loose end that I've got in this video. The team league I mentioned earlier. I did say that I lost week 1, but didn't say anything else. I actually won the remaining matches of the regular season, and barely lost my finals match against someone who had played at Worlds that year in a 3-game nail-biter, catching his and my teammate Corey Esmeyer's attentions, with them inviting me to practice with them on the regular. Our team won the league, and after the finals, they did an invitational bracket with all of the top performing players in the league. I was one of the lowest seeds and was dealing with a tough bracket. While that bracket is going to be important, I'm only going to do a quick montage of how it went because most of the matches were too straightforward to analyze in depth. Cue the music. Close, but not quite. It certainly was a much better run than I expected though, and gave me the confidence that I would need in the future, on top of teaching me a few lessons. One weird thing that I noticed was how Alex and Sebi gave me more of a challenge than most of the people with major results, and that taught me to not underestimate people even if they're unknown. The other thing was that I can beat top players, and that meant I should stop treating that like a big deal. If I want to make worlds, I will need to beat plenty of them along the way, so I had to get used to it. I will never become a top player if I always put them on a pedestal. To put it simply, the goal isn't to brag about how I beat a top player. It's to reach the point that people brag about beating me. Now, the only thing that we've got left is to talk about that last PC of 2016. I want to do that intro. What? You're going to do an intro for that PC, right? I guess? Then let me do it. Sure. Look on the desk, the script for it should be there. Okay, got it. Alright, I'll start the music now. Feel free to go ahead. Pokemon is a game of information. People will often go to absurd lengths before a tournament to make sure that people don't know what they're going to. Stop. Remind me to never let you do an intro again. That might be the worst intro I've ever heard. What was even the point of this intro? Check Twitter. Sure. Sup? I'm running this for the PC. Good luck to you all. What? Didn't you just ruin the whole point of the video? Wasn't this supposed to be the start of the rivalry? Didn't you spend the whole video trying to tell us how good he was? Don't tell me. Let's just move on to the team you're going to use. Good point. What am I going to use? It's time for our fake sponsor segment.
Do you need a team for an upcoming Premier Challenge that you can't get points from but still want to go to hang out with everyone?
Wow, YouTube ads sure are getting extremely specific. Yes, I do.
Then I've got what you need. Have you ever heard of Terrakion? We ran out of stock on that one, so we're going to give you the next best thing. Instead, have this Mega Kangaskhan sucker punching the Terrakion for a +2 boost, allowing you to run a standard Kang with your funny Rock Slide Pokemon, allowing you to run a Scarf on it.
You're losing me.
As compensation for the missing Whimsicott, we will include a Thunderous for maximum RNG and a Cresselia for speed control for free!
You're winning me back.
Oh wait, there's more! If you call in the next 15 minutes, because we don't have all day, we'll include this dual primal pair that just fling around in our warehouse.
It sure is convenient that you have a Groudon and Kyogre in the warehouse. Count me in.
Call 1-800 to give us the small payment of $99.99.
Did you actually need to have the sensor Zubat right next to me? I'm pretty sure that I'm deaf in one ear now.
That's right, $99.99. Team Rocket's Team Emporium. You steal the team, we steal the Pokemon.
Enough fooling around, let's just skip to the tournament. When I got to the PC, I was paired in round 1 against Scott Norris. He had won the PC in September, and generally had some solid results at locals. He was not ready for what was about to happen to him, though. This match has very little worth discussing, and let's show you why. Why, Rayquaza? Was it something I said? Was it something I did? After everything we've been through, this is how you wanted our times together to end? Our final tournament ended by a triple full para? I hope that someday I can earn your forgiveness for whatever I've done. Yeah, so I won. And this is why Scott couldn't stop Sebi. Rayquaza! With only 8 masters, it's basically a single elimination tournament. There's technically a top cut of 2, and typically there's 1 3-0 and 1 2-1 that make it. The 2-1 who makes it is usually the one who loses the 3-0 in round 3. For the next round, I was up against Kevin Brown. Kevin had been playing for a while and was running a fairly standard Xerneas team. I don't really have too much to say. He played better than me, and while I want to say that karma does exist, he just played better, and I most likely would have lost that match even without the miss. It was best of 3 Swiss and he won 2-0 anyway. There's really no excuse. Only 2 2-0s were left, Sebi and Kevin. I was going to face Alex for round 3, who was running a Zekrom team. He decided to bring Zekrom because he saw what Sebi posted and knew that a solid Zekrom team would have an amazing matchup into him. But he hit quite probably the worst matchup possible for him round 1. A Rayquaza Kyogre team featuring Draco Meteor Rayquaza. That team also had Stantler and Ludicolo. Alex played better, but I also didn't really have much of a matchup against him. I'm not going to say that it's why I made those mistakes, because I'm not even sure if it even happened in the first place, but I think I spent most of the set talking to Alex as we played. It's something that quite a few of us have done over the years, especially when there wasn't a lot at stake. Unsurprisingly, Sebi won over Kevin. Wolf's team was built to beat Standard Xerneas. I like to imagine that he chose to run this team because he was scared of me, but I'll tell you the truth. He probably couldn't care less about me. Top Cut was announced, and Sebi was going to have a rematch against Kevin for finals. Meanwhile, Kulam asked me if I wanted to play a friendly set against him, and I said sure. He was running a really cool Yveltal Kyogre team featuring Gourgeist. He shared a pace with me after, and I still use it every once in a while if I feel like messing around in VGC 2016 with friends. I'm pretty sure that he won because at a glance, my matchup is awful. While that was happening, the legend did it. After posting the team on Twitter, Sebi had won the tournament. The king was back on his throne. He took his applause and store credit and rode into the sunset. So yeah, that's what someone used to winning looks like. You know that this is a programming class, right? You were supposed to talk about the program you wrote. Yes, but who cares? We all know that no one would have paid attention anyway. I'll do it next time too. I will tell you the next thing that happened on my Pokemon World journey,